Universal's studio head, Carl Laemmle, discovered his niche in the earliest days of the studio. Horror films, monster movies, designed to scare the pants off an unsuspecting audience. Nearly a century later, we still remember the haunting images of the Hunchback of Notre and Phantom of the Opera. But it was in the early 1930s that Universal horror came into its own. Films like Dracula and Frankenstein thrilled audiences worldwide.
The Universal horror films were some of the greatest films made in that period.
Directors like British-born James Whale brought a European grace to these unseemly stories. Cinematographers like German-born Karl Freund played tricks of light to give these films their sense of dark foreboding. And then, in 1932, on the heels of Dracula's enormous success, Carl Laemmle enlisted Freund, this master cinematographer, to direct his newest franchise, The Mummy.
I can think back to when I was a second grader and began to get my subscription to Famous Monsters of Filmland. And I remember when the cover was of The Mummy, and it immediately got taped above my headboard in my room.
When I saw that movie, it wasn't just a horror movie. It was also adventurous and romantic and really exotic. And it really swept me away.
The thing people remember about The Mummy is the first 10 minutes, really. I mean, you're in Egypt, it's the British Museum expedition, and there they are working away on this mummy that they've dug up. And the archaeologists are sitting in the foreground, and behind them is this creature lying there in the sarcophagus. And it's Karloff in the most amazing makeup.
Boris Karloff, fresh off The Monster in Frankenstein, was brought on to play the dual roles of Imhotep and Ardeth Bay. In real life, Karloff stood only 5'11", and yet he seemed to tower menacingly over the film.
I remember as a kid seeing The Mummy and loving the fact that I was seeing Karloff in 2 makeups.
Suddenly, you have Karloff in this incredible old age makeup where you really can believe he's 3,000 years old.
The original movie is absolutely gripping.
In the years following The Mummy's enormous success, Universal returned to the franchise again and again, with films like The Mummy's Hand and The Mummy's Curse. And then for decades, The Mummy lay dormant, waiting. And then in 1999, Universal was to awaken The Mummy once again.
When I heard they were trying to make it, I called them up and set up a meeting and went in. I wanted to do The Mummy because I really had it down. I had the whole story. I just knew what I wanted to tell. It was this big, sweeping, romantic, action-packed adventure movie, wrapped in a mummy movie, if you will. It had horror and humor.
Steve shared everybody's enthusiasm for the project and for the task and the adventure of creating a new mummy. There was no question that he was the guy. As grand as some of the mummies have been, this is a very exciting and different movie.
It's a reinvention of a classic character, a beloved horror figure. We all remember Boris Karloff, and we look towards those productions with a nod and a wink, and that's old school. We pay respect to it.
The gods will receive into the underworld the spirit of Ankhsenamun.
We're doing a remake of the original Boris Karloff mummy because that involved the character of Imhotep, the priest who challenged the gods and was then buried alive. And the core of it, it's about a tragic and maybe even an evil romance, but it's about a romance nonetheless. And what he does for love, even if it means destroying the world.
We've created a character who's formidable, fierce, can shape change, can summon the 10 plagues on the earth.
In order to thrill modern audiences, the new Mummy needed to do more than just revisit the past. It needed to carry the franchise into the forefront of visual effects.
It's one of the most tremendous efforts of visual effects artists that I have ever personally witnessed.
What ILM has done is give the Mummy an energy and a personality that could not have been done in earlier times.
So many people work so hard to bring those ideas to the screen so that Stephen Sommers' vision could really become a reality.
This new mummy became a box office phenomenon, grossing over $400 million in the summer of 1999. The filmmakers immediately set to work on The Mummy Returns. There was more life in this mummy yet.
Within a couple weeks, I started trying to, figure out the whole story because I wanted it to be a new adventure.
Oh, I hate mummies.
It's got more special effects and a lot more action, but it had to be more romantic. And I thought, Brendan and Rachel now are very happily married. They're a great romantic couple. And I thought, why not? They should have a child as well, and we'll play with that. And that was part of the adventure and story.
It just seemed there'd been a good progression in character and story.
A couple of years ago, this would have seemed really strange to me.
You don't want it to be too different because then people come and go, well, that's not what I wanted to see. But if it's too similar, it's like, well, I already saw that.
With the first film being successful, you've got to get that balance right of having the same elements. You can't sort of turn out a completely different film. But the confidence of knowing that the first one worked allowed Steve to be a little bigger with the ideas, a little bolder, if you like.
Part of the reason The Mummy Returns works as well as it does is because the entire cruise came back across the board. Not only did we have the same cast, the same director, same visual effects people, we also had the same special effects people and the same creature and makeup people. The Scorpion King is probably the most difficult thing that we had to do on this movie. We wanted to create a truly memorable cinematic creature. Something's got to happen at the climax of the film that is bigger and better and more amazing than anything that has come before. And in this film, for us, that moment was the reveal of the Scorpion King.
The films have held a fascination for film audiences because the mummy is a beloved character. It's part of creating an illusion. That's what the audience comes to see. They want to root for the good guy and they want to boo the bad guy.
I think that's what the movie sets out to do. It's fun, it's romantic, it's action-packed. I think it's a roller coaster ride. You just get on and go, and before you know it, it's over. I think it's just very entertaining.
From Boris Karloff's Unforgettable Awakening to Brendan Fraser taming the beast, The Mummy lives on into this century and beyond.